The 2026 offseason is upon us here at One Jets Drive. The Jets have a lot of financial flexibility and draft capital. Going to have 4 picks in the top 44 in April's draft, including number 2 overall. Darren Muji and Aaron Glenn addressed the media here downstairs just the other day, and we're going to break down their comments and then what's ahead for the green and white in this pivotal offseason. Coming up with Bart Scott.
We can beat anybody in the world, and I think we're going to win next Sunday.
It's picked off. Aaron Glenn. Jumbled and caught. Jumbo Elliott. One-handed catch. It Chris back. Gets running loose. Freeman. Can't wait.
Happy New Year, brother.
Happy New Year.
Any resolutions or what?
Nah, just keep going.
Just keep going. Well, the Jets quickly turned the page from the 2025 season this week. Darren Muji and Aaron Glenn talking to the media. Muj, Bart said, I believe we can be competitive and respectable right away next year. Your thoughts?
They know they got to go to work, and they know they're going to be held at a high standard next year, and they know that they have to show significant improvement with this roster and also with the results at the end of the day, even though they're going to have one of the hardest schedules in all of football next year.
Oh, man, you're already previewing the schedule, huh? You look at those 2026 opponents.
Yeah, man.
Hey, what do you make of the Jets' financial flexibility? We don't know the final numbers because the NFL has not set the cap yet, but it could be $90 million, and then you add the draft capital in there, $90 to $100 million. You have the number 2 overall pick. You have 2 first-round picks. You have 4 picks in the top 44 overall. You got the 5 first-rounders over the course of the next 2 off seasons. I mean, what do you make of what's in the bank, per se, before the Jets go out and address the holes in this roster?
Well, I mean, you have a lot of flexibility, and that's a good thing. A lot of options, a lot of different ways to make trades, flexibility to absorb certain contracts or other people that, may be out of favor at certain places. But they have to sit down, do their forensic analysis, and figure out what's the best path going forward. And they have to have a plan that they have convictions with. It starts with the draft. It starts with what's the answer at quarterback. That's where the conversation begins and ends. Everything else is, conversations about AVT, conversations about Brees. Those are conversations that needs to be had. You have your pending free agents. You probably let a lot of guys walk. But the biggest decision is how you add to this coaching staff. Because I think how you add to this coaching staff, as far as on the defensive side of the ball, is all the staff going to be retained? It's been a lot of, 8 openings in the NFL. That means a lot. That means 8 staff that don't have assistants that are quality players, that if you can improve your staff, you want to do that as well.
So where do you want to start? You just mentioned 2 big things there, the defense or the quarterback.
Well, defense coordinator, I think, is probably the biggest thing out there when you think about it. I don't think a guy like Olbrich is somebody that will come back, but you can look at the head coach, Raheem Morris. You can look at also, Jim Schwartz is probably going to be the number 1 guy out there.
Right.
And I know that probably, if Stefanski gets the job out here and Schwartz doesn't get the job, I guarantee they'll probably be looking for the opportunity to try and bring and package those 2 guys together because they work so well in Cleveland together. They know each other, but Jim Schwartz has always been one of these great Rex Ryan, Spagnuolo. I'm trying to think, Jim Johnson. He's in that same ilk.
Yeah, it feels like anywhere he's gone, it's been a successful defense. Yep.
Exactly.
All right, so AG talked about synergy, Bart. Said you got to have a compatibility and you got to see things the same way. Looking at the Jets personnel, I mean, they're going to have a lot of new faces on defense, but what kind of defense do you think AG wants here?
I mean, that's what I'm saying. That's what kind of defense he wants. And you talk about synergy, the defense coordinator has to excel at that same defense as well. So that's what you talk about. That's why I'm saying before you can even move to the second step, you got to be able to figure out and figure out what the first step is. And part of that is figuring out who's going to be the defense coordinator so that you can devise a plan so you can go out and attack the free agents that you're looking for with that equity that you have, that salary cap space that you have, but then also figure out what are you going to do with the draft capital to try and fill in those spots so that you have, young guys, youth and enthusiasm, but then you have veteran leadership and poise.
Yeah, because you know this better than anybody. When you change coaches, I mean, everybody has a different thought process in terms of what that personnel actually looks like. Because, hey, maybe an old staff liked a guy on your roster and a new staff comes in and says, you know what? I don't think he's a really good fit for what we're doing. So Glenn and whomever the new defensive coordinator is, and he's going to interview Chris Harris as well, who was the interim defensive coordinator for the Jets down the stretch. I mean, they got to see it. They got to see it the same way because that is a big decision for Aaron Glenn as he moves ahead.
You have to get this right because you can't go with 2 seasons with the defense performance that we had, especially if you're going to go out and spend defensive capital or equity for defensive capital, and then the results aren't the same. So just as important as, getting the quarterback, because this would be the second quarterback that this regime has picked. This would be the second defense coordinator this team has picked. And patience runs thin in the NFL nowadays. So this move is pivotal for him and his success and how much he wants to get involved. Not trying to be a micromanager, but, defense is his forte. He may have to get that done.
So as we sit here, it's January 7th. The draft is 3.5 months away. Have you looked at some of these college quarterbacks already? Have you dove into your study?
Nah, man, I was knee deep in what was going on this year. You know what I mean? So I haven't really broken these guys down, and I'll start doing that, probably in the next couple of weeks, because the shows and things that I'll start talking about and my focus will start being talking about the future of the Jets and Giants. So it'd be about diving in not only to that, if the Jets would have listened to me last year when I said Harold Fannin 1 million times and on my show 1 million times, maybe they'll let Bart get 1 pick out of the draft.
All right.
You know what I mean?
I'll tell you what, that national semifinal, it's interesting what's happening in college football right now for a multitude of reasons. You got Miami playing Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin is the head coach at LSU. But
it's a mess, by the way.
I know. From a Jets fan's perspective, you're looking at Indiana, Fernando Mendoza going against Oregon, and Dante Moore. Now, Dante Moore is not declared for the draft yet. So
you're gonna be looking at Trinidad though as well.
Yeah, that's true.
If he doesn't get that waiver, and that's a guy you can get at the top of the second round, and you can go in and get you 2 outstanding football players and able to get him and bring in a veteran, who knows? Maybe you can strike gold. I think the longer and longer these playoffs go, players are going to ascend because if we would have started the season, none of these quarterbacks was on the top of our list at the beginning of the year. So maybe we've overlooked Trinidad, who looked, just like Jackson Dart, in my opinion, maybe even better with some of the plays and the throws that he made, and now the spotlight is on him. Let's see if he can step up. And if he goes to the national championship, who knows?
Man, he played outstanding against Georgia, and Miami's got a couple beasts up front along that defensive line. They're scorching off those edges, so we'll have to see if his mobility keeps them off balance. Real quickly, as far as college football is concerned, last night, I don't know if you saw this because you were feeling a little bit under the weather, but the University of Washington has a quarterback by the name of Desmond Williams. Apparently, he signed a contract or signed something that said he was going to go back to Washington. Well, last night he entered the transfer portal with a "do not contact me," and people this morning are thinking that, hey, he actually has signed a new deal with LSU. We'll have to see how it all plays out. My only thing is, college football got to get a hold of it. I like the parity that we're seeing. We're seeing other teams like Mississippi 15 years ago. We wouldn't have thought of Ole Miss ever being in this position.
Indiana.
Yes. But on the other side of the coin, it is the wild, wild west, man. You are probably jealous of these kids.
Of course. Well, it's the wild, wild west for these coaches, too. Because these coaches been doing that. And, what Lane Kiffin did to Ole Miss, trying to hold them hostage as well, it's something that's been going on for years. Oh, come here. I'm going to teach your kid integrity and, all that stuff. And, oh, I'm gone. Like, hold up, coach. You told me you was going to be here for 4 years. My son just signed to you. So I'm glad that the players can give the coaches a dose of their own medicine.
Man, you grew up in the Midwest. What do you make of Indiana's resurgence? It's not even a resurgence. They've just been reborn.
It's a surgence. It's the first one.
Yeah,
it's the first one. I mean, we didn't pay attention to them. They had a little run when Randall L. was there back in the day, but nobody took them seriously for nothing serious. It just was fun to watch a little bit. So, I mean, this is brand new territory, but this is the beauty of the NIL. And being able, and what's so amazing with Indiana is the fact that they didn't spend a lot of NIL money. A lot of these guys from JMU, he brought over his guys that he had been training, staying in the program, and they played at a high level. So that's the beauty of it, because just imagine if Indiana gets some money to put behind this man, what can happen and how he can dominate potentially college football.
Oh, unbelievable. I mean, when you think of the Hoosiers, I think about Gene Hackman or Steve Alford or Bobby Knight. You don't think about football, dude.
Not at all. I can't name one Indiana guy in the NFL that I can even remember.
Antoine Randall L. How about that?
Right. I mean, yeah, that's about it. I'm talking about like we took that as a given because we talked about that. I don't know not one.
Yeah, but for a Jets fan, I mean, that national semifinal to be watching, obviously, green and white, number 2 overall selection. A lot of people. Go ahead.
It is a scenario where Mendoza is picked second because Caleb Downs, you look at the Raiders and how they're structured with Geno Smith there, they can buy time for Dante Moore to let him sit for a year and get the experience that people feel like he needs. When you think about, him being, the future, he can get in, and they may have a West Coast bias because they see a lot more of him than we do, of course, because we're asleep half the time he's playing his games.
True. Okay, so right now, Justin Fields under contract, Brady Cook under contract. We know Tyrod Taylor scheduled to be a free agent. The Jets got to look at everything. For whatever reason, it didn't work this year. I mean, we could have a full series on what happened offensively for the Jets. But as far as an offseason approach, and we talked about it a little bit in the past, but now that we're starting the offseason, you think there is a world where the Jets go out in free agency or trade, bring in a veteran, and then additionally draft a quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on if they believe that the veteran quarterback is the future answer. If you think that maybe Malik Willis is a guy, you know what I mean? We can talk about him now because the season's over. That could be one scenario where your veteran is your future. He's probably the only guy out there that people are going to consider could be a future starter and maybe a future star when we think about what happened with Geno, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, even Daniel Jones. So this is the world that we live in now. You have to look at all scenarios. Like you said, we don't know if Dante Moore is going to stay in or come out. So you have to have a plan B in case, the Raiders take the only quarterback that people think is a first-round draft pick.
In today's professional landscape, what do you want from a pro quarterback, an NFL quarterback? Because we're going to get to the pieces around whomever is playing under center here in a couple minutes, but I just wanted to ask you about your prototypical quarterback in today's game.
Well, for me, it's you want above average athleticism, but you want a guy with a high processor. You want a guy that can process fast and know where to go with the football, get the ball in his hands fast. That's the most important part. For me, the number one trait for any quarterback is their processor.
Do you need to have a certain personality in order to succeed in New York? You're not buying that? Okay.
Who cares? Like, we've seen loquacious guys. We've seen guys like Eli Manning. It don't matter. Like, it's not the person. It's how they perform on the field.
And your overall view on free agency versus the draft, I'm not talking about the quarterback position. I'm talking about overall because, Amuji said yesterday that, listen, yes, you're going to be aggressive, but you're going to be calculating as well. And I have always thought over the years that the best teams, they're not going into free agency every year and they have a ton of money to spend because, you hopefully are in a situation where you're drafting very talented guys and you want to resign those guys to a second contract.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing starts with how do you maximize the productivity of the guys you have? Like, how do I set up a system and surround, this team with players that's going to be plus multipliers that are going to enhance the unit? Like, we have to figure out why Will McDonald and Jermaine Johnson didn't play at the levels that we anticipate them to play at. And how do we get those guys to play at a high level? Then you worry about free agency. You worry about scheme with those guys. Okay, like, why did they not, play? Do we need to go to a 3-4? Do we need to play more of a different type of defense? Right? Then you say, okay, how do I plug in the personnel to make sure that we can accentuate the strengths of those two guys if we believe that they're guys that can be Pro Bowlers, that can be up there, top 10, top 15 in the NFL in sacks. How do we do that? Then we have to say, okay, now we have to figure out what we do at linebacker. Like, is Sherwood playing out of position, which I think he should be a will linebacker? And how do we go get that big thumper, that sideline to sideline physical guy, right? I feel like the Jets had two guys that pretty much had the same game. I mean, Quincy was a lot more explosive, but they're both undersized linebackers. You can't have two undersized linebackers. Like in basketball, having two undersized backcourts, a point guard and a shooting guard that's 6 feet. That don't work because so you need, I think you need a different type of style. Styles that complement each other, not clones of each other.
Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji were first-year guys in their respective positions. How much do you think they benefit from just having the experience? And what do you make of what you heard from Glenn yesterday, saying that, hey, listen, I had a better handle on things now.
Right, because we've seen this story in good and we've seen this story in bad. And we just, want to make sure that we can support him so that he can, end out on the ladder. But, of course, the biggest jump from any job is from year 1 to year 2. So now he's going into a situation where he doesn't have to worry about, am I retaining Aaron Rodgers? Am I doing this and that? He's not doing things for the first time. So now he should have a plan and understand it's what you think the job is and what the job is actually is. And you only figure that out by experience.
All right, Bart. Starts up front in the National Football League along the trenches. What do you make of the offensive line here with the Jets? Same starting five, left to right, all 17 games this season, and it's a young group.
Yeah, you just got to make a decision on Barrett Tucker if he's a guy that you're going to bring back. I think also you got to make a decision on John Simpson. You talk about the continuity of this group, and like what we always said, like with a different quarterback, would this group be seen differently? Because, a lot of those sacks was because we had two quarterbacks that held onto the ball for extremely long periods of time. So we can assess and project, but we really don't know how good this offensive line is and can be because we have to judge it, once we get quality or above average play at the quarterback position.
One of the priorities this offseason is getting that passing game going. And again, that is all tied to whomever's throwing the pill, but Garrett Wilson will be back. What do you make of what the Jets have at the receiver position? What do you see from Mitchell and Mechie down the stretch? And potentially, what would you like to see from that group, maybe as far as an addition is concerned?
I mean, well, you have Mechie, who's a slot guy, would be a dream slot guy. Also, the ability to play the X, which allows Garrett to be in the slot at times. I still think they need to get either a certified guy or a younger guy coming in. I don't know if that's through the draft, first, second round, top of second round, like a Luther Burton type of guy with what Chicago was able to do to make sure. Because one thing about receivers is they're in and out of the lineup all the time. And you want to make sure that you have enough depth, and we have to see who's going to step up to be that 1B. Or that one, or that two, that 2A, who's going to step up and be the guy opposite, because when you look at guys like, A.J. Brown, you have Devontae Smith. You look at guys like Mike Evans. He has Chris Godwin and Ibuka. You look at, I would like to see. I mean, I know maybe I mentioned might not like it, but I mean, a guy like Alec Pierce that's going to be available, who's just a pure deep threat. I would like to see them go get a guy like that. If they can't, get that in free agency, because he's too expensive, you go get that in the draft.
Yeah, and you have the assets to do it. So at the tight end position, you re-sign Ruckert. Mason Taylor had a solid opening year. So is going to be back at that spot. Running back, Jets like they're stable.
No, I think they still need a tight end.
Okay.
You need 3 tight ends in this league.
Yeah.
Because the majority of this league plays in 12 personnel. So I think they need to definitely go. I've been saying it for a while. They didn't get Harold Fannin, who's a different type of Delaney type of Walker type of tight end, which is like that check. People don't forget Kyle Juszczyk was a tight end for the Baltimore Ravens, and then he kind of merged into like this U back. I think they should go get a guy like Isaiah Likely for sure, to Trump 1-to-1, who's never, because a guy like Njoku or some of these other guys, they may cost a lot of money. They've shown that they can play at a high level. I think we've yet to even get to the tip of the iceberg with Likely. We saw that tremendous catch that he made, on the 4th down, but he's a guy that I think would be perfect complement to the type of U-back / guy that can line up at slot receiver, guy that can line up in the backfield, guy that can help you capture the edge, and a guy that's looking for a prove-it deal. That meaning that he's not a guy that you sign for 5 years. He's a guy that gets a 3-year deal. He's out of Coastal Carolina. He's a guy that you get, and 3 years. To me, he reminds me so much of Dustin Keller. We haven't had a unique receiving type of tight end like that since Dustin has left.
Yeah, and teams sometimes can put that 13 personnel on the field as well, and that's matchup nightmares for defenses when you're using tight ends like that. Running backs, you got the young dudes. You got Braylon Allen, who's coming back from injury. You got Isaiah Davis, and then Breece Hall. Hall, of course, gets over 1,000 yards for the first time in his career. When he's gone, he's a top 5 running back in this league. What are you making a decision ahead for this front office in terms of Hall?
Well, I think this regime is going to have to, because like once we said, like Breece said before, he wasn't picked by this regime. He has to prove it. So, but once again, Breece is saying I wasn't picked by this regime. So I think they have to sell Breece a little bit too on the vision moving forward. And the thing is, they're going to probably have to tag him, because I think he's going to be sought after. And, to get a long-term deal, I'm sure you're going to have to sell Breece on a long-term vision, because if I'm a running back, I'm looking at the fact that I've been in the league 4 years, that, my next contract could be my last as far as me being seen as a feature back. So running backs have to think differently. Most people think, oh, man, like when I was coming out, I'm like, man, I get my second deal, then I got a third one coming. Running backs don't even think like, hey, man, like people going to start looking at me the closer I get to 30 that I'm done. Not everybody's Derrick Henry, not everybody's Frank Gore, right? So by the time I get close to 30, which, 4 years from now, Breece will be approaching that, he may say this may be my last, payday or my last opportunity to be a lead back in a offense.
But ultimately, so what I'm getting to here is that we know over the course of the last 10 years, we saw the Jets draft Sam Darnold. We saw the Jets draft Zach Wilson. If they draft another young quarterback, there are more pieces here offensively, more infrastructure in place, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, it's more infrastructure, but, sometimes you have to be patient with young quarterbacks too, right? We saw Caleb Williams. It took, 2 years in the right system, and Ben Johnson implemented his system for things to work. The thing is, we have to answer the quarterback position. I mean, that just answers all the questions that you have as far as this team's success or failure. It's still going to be based on who's behind center, because the quarterback touches the ball every time. So that means the quarterback is more responsible for wins and losses in this league. That's why it goes on their record and not, the running back's record.
Yeah, and defensively, again, we get back to that and say, okay, the Jets going to have they could have a new defensive coordinator, and what is the personnel actually going to look like? How many new starters could you have? Could you have 7 new starters on the defensive side of the ball? Could it be 6 new starters? We'll have to see how it all plays out. There are some guys who took really good first steps, I thought, for the Jets this year, including Malachi Moore. I like the depth and versatility that Harrison Phillips and the leadership that he brought to the table. Jawan Briggs, the Jets thought, okay, we're going to bring in a guy, a young dude, a big body. He's going to help us against the run, but he really developed as a pass rusher. You mentioned Will McDonald. Dude, I would love to see Will have the opportunity to become a finisher. He had 7 or 8 sacks this year. The problem is for any pass rusher, as you know, is that, it's a lot easier. And Myles Garrett, I get it. He's an outlier. But you want to be in a situation where you're letting Will just tee off and teams have to pass against you in the second half because they were down. There were so few times this year where the Jets actually had a lead in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I mean, we know that's the reality, but, we have to get more. We have to get more out of those guys too. I mean, that's the reality of it. We have to get more out of those guys, and how do we help those guys to be able to produce more? And, being able to make teams one-dimensional, get in 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 9s, that's part of it. So it's going to be important to see how that pans out, how that plays out.
Yeah, we can circle those 3 guys. I think they're young guys. They bring a lot to the table, and
but they're getting old now. Once you start getting to your 4th year, like, we expect a lot.
Yeah,
4th years, and if I'm correct, Will is going into his 4th or his 3rd. He's going to his 4th.
Yes, he's going into
Jermaine's
4th.
Jermaine's going into his 5th. Right, so it's important. You know what I mean? And if I'm Jermaine's playing for a future contract.
Yep.
You talk about all this salary cap space that's freed up. Jermaine gets 15, 13 sacks. That could be an opportunity to get you $100, $200, $150 million, $100 million. That's $30 million a year is what, the pass rushers are going for.
Yeah, and
I
think
Jermaine would be motivated because he has to be motivated because if the Jets could use one of those draft picks on a pass rusher as well.
Sure.
Which we saw this same situation with Kayvon Thibodeau dealing with Carter and Burns in the future.
Yeah, and he's going to benefit from some more time away from that Achilles as well. We see guys take that jump in their second year after a major injury like that. And then Sherwood continues to be a young guy, like you mentioned before. You'd love to see him switch a little bit more outside. We'll see how it all plays out. Finally, NFL playoffs this weekend. Jets fans will be watching, and hopefully we can end that drought, that team that the last team that made the playoffs was the Green and White, of course. You were on. Any upsets throughout the league this weekend?
Upsets? I don't know if it's upsets.
Are more road teams going to win, or more home teams going to win?
I think Jacksonville, beating Buffalo is considered an upset, but they're the team that's hosting,
right? And
they're the team that has the much better record. So, I think that's not an upset. But I can see that happening. I can see New England going down.
Wow.
To me, I see Pittsburgh going down. I just think the defense would be too much for Aaron. And on the West Coast,
San Fran playing at Philly.
No.
You got Chicago and Green Bay a third time.
Yeah, I can maybe see that Chicago can be upset. But I'm talking about can the Rams, the team, the Super Bowl one, the Super Bowl favorites, can the Rams get upset? They've already lost to Carolina. It's always one every year, and we'll see. We'll be surprised. Most of the games will go the way we think they're going to go, but it's always one upset.
All right,
that's why I call it wild card, because it's wild.
That's right.
Untamed.
Nobody more wild than you. Thanks, brother.